Here's what's coming up in episode 129. Terry Andersen.
And I didn't know who I was with. I didn't know the man in the house. I didn't know the children. I didn't know what it meant to even drive a car. And it was during the amnesia period that I had this out-of-body experience. I said, well, actually, I work as a medical intuitive and a psychic medium. And he said, what? I said, yeah, I had this near-death experience and it left me really gifted. So I had to get training, you know? So we had quite a conversation. He was really fascinated. He said, quick, grab my hand and tell me all about me. I said, no. I said, the siren's going. We're driving at 80 miles an hour. This is not the time. And what's going on with your stomach?
OMG.
Welcome to the Big Seance Podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSeance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the seance.
Before we get to a truly fascinating interview with Terry Andersen, I want to point out that you'll hear a point in the interview where I start to wind things down to say goodbye. But it turns out we weren't done. So be sure to keep listening, because one thing you'll hear is my surprised response when Terry tuned in to a health issue I was recovering from. I didn't include all of that commentary here, but it was cool. Here we go. A sudden, violent near-death event caused Terry Andersen to have an out-of-body experience with beings who showed her a past and future life review, detailing people she'd meet, personal and world events, future technologies, and more. When she returned, she felt like a completely different person, with the ability to see into people's lives and bodies, sense illness, past and future accidents, injuries, time of death, business dynamics, baby's health before birth, and communicate with departed souls regardless of time or location. Her abilities that on her site, she includes precognition, which we've actually had a lot of episodes on in the last month or two, and remote viewing. She's a psychic medium. And something I'm super fascinated with, and I don't think we've talked about a lot on the show, is she's a medical intuitive. You can find more about Terry Andersen at terryandersen.com. And that's Andersen with an E-N on the end. So make sure you type that. Hi, Terry.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited. And I know I have some listeners excited because I tend to have a lot of Canadian paranormal nerds that listen to this show, and I know they're excited to hear a fellow Canadian.
I'm sure you'll be able to identify my accent.
Yes. Vancouver, right?
Yes, Vancouver Island.
Awesome. I'm nodding and shaking my head like I know where that is, but I'm sure it's fabulous and beautiful.
It is, yes. It's not far from Vancouver.
Okay. And we actually have a couple of Canadian listeners who have submitted questions for you a little bit later. So as that pops up, I'm excited to ask those questions for them. So I offer everyone who comes to my parlor, we call it, my big seance parlor. It's fictional. We can pretend. I offer them a beverage. So what can I pour for you today?
A beverage.
A beverage. Well, it could be anything since it's fictional.
Coffee.
Coffee
sounds nice. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So, Terry, as I read in your bio, you had a terrifying experience in 1986 that led to the life that you live and the work that you do now. And because I've heard you describe this a bit, I think people are going to find it interesting because it doesn't really fit into the typical OBE or NDE that people might be used to hearing about. So can you share a little bit about your experience that led you to where you are now?
Sure. Thank you for asking. I was 30 years old, and I had been asked to work for a lady who was sick one night in a neighborhood pub. So I was married at the time and had 2 little children, 7 and 8 years old, and my husband was at home with the kids. And I went to work, and I was working by myself. And as the night progressed, I got more and more agitated in my gut. And I kept phoning my husband saying, there's something wrong, there's something wrong. And I must have phoned him for 4 hours out of an 8-hour shift. And he didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And then at the end of the evening, after the last patrons left, I was locking the doors and windows, and I thought I could hear noises outside, and I was really scared. So I had my car keys in my hand and set the alarm and bolted out the back door. And as I was slamming the door behind me, 2 men in black with ski masks and a sawed-off shotgun and a crowbar beat me up very badly and threatened to kill me if I didn't let them in the building. So when they finally allowed me to talk, that was after multiple injuries, head injuries, chest injuries, spinal injuries. And I told them that I didn't have the keys, that these are the keys to my car, and I couldn't get back in the building. So they believed me and they let me go. And I really feared, as they held that gun against my head, that I would die right there and nobody would find me till morning. And I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to see my kids again. So I went to an owner of the pub and he phoned the police. And I went to the station and what I thought was pick these 2 guys out of the books, out of the mugshot books, and went home and told my husband that we were moving because I thought these guys were local. They knew what I looked like. They saw my car. And if they got caught, they could be looking at 10 years for attempted armed robbery. So we moved very quickly. And then I went into this 11 months of amnesia. When I started coming out of amnesia, I realized I couldn't read. And then I realized I had a brain injury. And I didn't know who I was with. I didn't know the man in the house. I didn't know the children. I didn't know what it meant to even drive a car. And when I got in the car to drive, I didn't know where I was going. So I had really lost the ability to function. And I finally wound up in hospital for about 3 months and began treatment. And it was during the amnesia period that I had this out-of-body experience. And when I explained the event to a neurologist who was teaching other medical professionals about brain function, he says, well, in a situation like that where you have a gun at your head and you cannot escape, the adrenaline peaks and it cascades and a death hormone is tripped. And at that point, you can see everything all at once, past, present, and future. But it takes years to integrate all of those images. And he said, you're going to have a problem with adrenaline for many years. I didn't know what any of that meant at the time, but I certainly did find out. And so my marriage shattered because I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who or even what I was. And I was in another realm with beings who gave me this past and future life review. And it was on multiple screens. And I remember a tall being in white opened my third eye. And it was so traumatic. They didn't use any anesthetic. And, I have some of these dominant memories from being in between life or out of this physical body and traveling at the speed of thought, wherever I wanted to go and gather whatever information I wanted. So when I came back to body, it was as if I looked at this body and I said, well, I thought I was dead. Why am I back? And whose body is this? And why don't I fit the body? and then I realized, oh, there's males here and females, and there's all these power structures on this planet. And I did not feel like I was from here at all. Because when I was in another dimension, I was with beings. We were sitting in these very special chairs. And this was outside time and space. And their information exuded to me like telepathy. And there was a lot of information that came to me. And that was my dominant memory, was being outside of time and space with those beings, non-corporeal beings. So then when I came back, I realized I had all of these abilities. I could shake somebody's hand and boom, see right into their house and understand the dynamics of their life. And I went back to my doctor and I told my doctor what was happening. And my doctor said, "Oh, it sounds like you had a near-death experience." So the doctor referred me to IANS, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies.
That is amazing that you had a doctor that was clear-headed and open enough to guide you immediately right there. That I just want to say props to that doctor. That is awesome.
Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. He really helped guide the rest of my life. And then I started having these kinds of psychic medical experiences with everybody. And I had to recluse, actually. And I started reading about 7 books a week, just scanning them, just flipping through them all at the same time. And these books were in all these different disciplines by people who had 2 or 3 degrees. And as I was flipping through the pages, literally, I thought, "Oh, I remember that. I remember that. I remember that." Yet I did not have the educational background for the information I was catching up to. So that experience that I had outside of time and space with those beings was a download with a future life plan that I came in with. And I thought, wow, am I a walk-in, what they call a walk-in? Or is this a reincarnation? Like, what is this? And I really became very open-minded at that point and really started researching a lot to try and understand this near-death experience and what had really happened to me. So I helped run the Vancouver Island Near-Death Experience Association in collaboration with the International Association. And from there, then I found IRVA, which is the International Remote Viewing Community, and began treatment there, or not treatment, sorry, but began training with several people, but mostly with Lyn Buchanan, who used to teach at the CIA for 25 years. And teach people how to do this remote viewing. And the first conference that I attended, I thought, oh, these are my peers. This is what I've been doing. And I felt right at home. So I began that training. And eventually I left the training to go and pursue other kinds of training too. And it's absolutely jaw-dropping, the training that I received and how I was able to hone and further develop these abilities, which I use, with everybody that I provide readings to. So, but I want to say what really changed my life was that I had this precognitive dream about my brother and his son, about a car accident. And because I was hurrying for a flight to America, I did not phone my brother. I phoned my sister and I told her about it. And she gave me my brother's phone number. But I didn't phone him because I was in such a rush. And then 2 weeks later, I had another dream where I was on a bed with a child, and this bed was moving into a hole in the wall, and there was a cloudy brain. And I woke up and I thought, this is not a dream. This is a visit with a child. But who is this child, and what does this mean? And so I went to work that day, and I was telling a lady at lunch exactly what I just said that about this so-called dream, but was actually a visit, and I was paged to the phone by my sister. And she told us our nephew had been in a car accident. He was in the Vancouver Children's Hospital in a coma. And they did an MRI scan, and it showed a cloudy brain, which meant he had brain damage. So we all went to Vancouver, and there I met with my brother, who told me what happened. And then he takes me into a room where here's a little 8-year-old boy laying in a bed in a coma, and it's the first time I ever met him. Yet I had a dream about him 2 weeks before the car accident and a dream the night of the accident when he went through the MRI scan. And I thought, well, how can my consciousness do that? How does that work? And so I felt tremendous guilt. I just stood in prayer. I didn't know what else to do.
Guilt that you had dreamt about it before it happened?
And not phone my brother to warn him. So that prompted me to get training in controlled remote viewing and then to go on and get training in all these other areas. Mm-hmm. Because I see, the future. I have a lot of precognitive dreams about not only my personal life, but other people I haven't even met yet that I would then meet or have or be involved with in some capacity. So it has been a very interesting journey. And I remember at one point, I want to say here, I went to the university and talked to a professor of psychology, and I said, well, I'm having all these precognitive dreams and all these abilities. And he says, well, nobody's going to believe you, Terry. And I thought, oh my gosh, this person is teaching how many students, and then they go out into the world to try and help people who are having these spiritual emergence. And how can they help them if they don't really understand what precognition is or validate it? Mm-hmm. And I had been heavily involved in churches my whole life, but this near-death experience did not fit within the church's teachings. So I left conventional church forever and, started to investigate true spirituality. I think religion can be maybe a foundation like kindergarten for true spirituality to emerge. But in my mind, religion is just a way to control people and not allow them to tap into their own spirituality. That's my version.
Well, yeah. I just want to back up for a second because I have recently a colleague whose husband was held up, a delivery person was held up by two armed men, and it was a relatively short experience, and they just took the car, basically. And just that experience has given him so much trauma that he's had to deal with in the last month or so. And so when I think about all of the physical trauma that you went through, do you feel like, in a way, and I'm sure you've thought through this, I also think, why did this happen to you? And was there some kind of like fate involved? But do you think it also was meant to protect you from, having to, at that time period, remember so much of it or go through it or replay it, or while you healed from that? Because I can't imagine how much trauma, and how long it takes to recover from something like that.
It did take a long time and a small army of people to put me back together again, because I had to learn how to read and write and walk and talk and interact all over again, as if I had been completely reborn. Mm-hmm. And I had to build a new personality and a new life because I was on my own.
And at that time, did you have a memory of the experience?
No, I had amnesia for 11 months.
And so that probably protected you, I guess, from...
Probably, yeah. The trauma was so profound. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I went through, like I evolved. And I have since heard many stories about the process of consciousness, of the evolution of consciousness that happens from trauma. And I wonder how many people, who are in the forces, armed forces, Navy, mm-hmm. etc., or just people in general that have survived PTSD or tremendous trauma, and they are changed. They are forever changed. They become ultra sensitized. And that is a function of the adrenaline making you so sensitive that the brain is actually on full throttle. Some people can develop tremendous abilities, and then they need the support and training in order to hone those abilities and apply them as needed, or however they, whatever their calling is. And I feel like when this happened to me, it felt, yes, I have this gift, these gifts, these abilities now, but what is the cost? And it felt, more like a curse in the beginning. And
sure.
With training, then it became a gift, a valuable gift. And the evolution of these abilities continue. I'm not stuck in one spot with it. Like when I do medical intuitive readings or other kinds of readings, my body acts like an antenna, and I get this information. And even with connecting to departed souls, they are moving my body, and it's kind of like spiritual sign language that I'm getting. or some other kind of language that's coming in to my body. And my body actually moves, and I have to decode every impression through my body. So it is changing, because in controlled remote viewing, I used to have to make notes and ideograms and that kind of thing. I don't do that anymore. The information comes into my awareness in different parts. And so decoding
as you learn to translate it.
Oh, it's an amazing process, you know. And I wanted to say the first time I ever meditated was after the armed robbery assault. When I got up from the meditation, I was walking through the kitchen, and I saw these 3 liquid golden crystalline light bars inside my head, and I was transported to another dimension. And I said something that was very prophetic, and my husband heard it, and he said, "What?" He was so shocked. But that event happened about a week later. And then I'd started having all these dreams about things that would happen the next day or a few hours later or a week later or whatever. You know, I was curious to understand how this all worked and what the purpose of it was. You know, I thought, what have I got? Have I got the flu? You know, but yeah, it was, and I became kind of like a scientist without the background for it, you know, without the educational background. So I had to catch up to all this research that I had been downloaded. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to describe.
You said before this experience you did have abilities, but do you mean that in the way that they say everybody has abilities, you know, or did you already have above what is normal for intuitive abilities?
That's hard to define. I will say I had a repetitive dream as a child that I was running in the backyard and a lightning bolt had me and I couldn't move. And so I think I came in with a lot of energy into this life. My mom was a psychic medium, but I don't think she had any training.
Yeah.
So we have that proclivity or that ability in our family, and it runs through the gene pool on our side.
Yeah.
So even my dad has abilities, but he just passed away.
So your list of abilities and strengths is impressive. On your site, you say, people don't need to be present for me to gather information for or about them in any area of life or business, regardless of time or location. And I think that's impressive. And here's a list of Terry's strengths and abilities from her site too. I mean, it's like an incredible resume is what it is. Health, life changes, relationships, business, finance, PTSD, obviously, and you would have some experience to relate that to, NDEs, military experiences, missing or murdered persons, international politics, advanced technologies, non-disclosure agreements, executive and corporate services, corporate research and development in any field or purpose with precision. So, I mean, you can't get bored in your gig now because you can just no 2 gigs are the same, right?
That's true. They're not. And it's very rewarding work because of all the different kinds of people that I meet. And everyone is a different, needs different help. So I took some courses with a team of neuroscientists and specialists about PTSD recovery because a lot of people come to me with PTSD. And so that's very helpful. And all of the, that list that you just described was honed from all these different trainings that I've had with all these different specialists around the world. And I used to be involved in politics. Mm-hmm. And was involved in real estate and interior design and a children's organization, but I had to stop all that when I got really sick. And then I had to come out as a psychic medium, medical intuitive. After my training, it had become a more important focus than all of the other issues.
Yeah.
And because I had this future look ahead, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So it was like I came back in with a mission, a very distinct mission. And I was shown very advanced technologies. And I know who these technologies are for. It's not generalized. It's specific to certain people on the planet. And a lot of the things that I was shown have happened, but there's still a lot of things that I was shown that haven't happened yet. So part of my challenge is to find the correct timelines for these things, which, I'm doing with applied precognition organizations and that kind of research.
You've worked with our buddy Marty Rosenblatt, who has been on the show.
Oh, I didn't know he had been on the show.
He has, yes.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
He was the first time that I was brave enough to tackle this topic, because I've always kind of, we've done a lot of psychic medium stuff and ghosts, and because I didn't quite understand this, precognition stuff, and it got a little kind of sciencey for my brain. I was afraid of it, and obviously I'm supposed to hit on it more because we've had like 3 or 4 episodes since then on, precognition and all that, and remote viewing and things. So we're going there.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's an amazing field. And I was under contract with him for almost a year to do work in that field. And now I'm going to be doing some other training with some other people in the same field. They don't call it controlled remote viewing now. This is called controlled precognition. So, and mine was, I kind of came in from another realm, or back from another realm, with all this precognition. And so how it manifested in my life as I was learning to understand these abilities was that I would get déjà vu, but to the power of 10, where I would feel it and then bang, get sucked in more and more and more and more powerful. And then I knew I was walking through what I was already shown. So that's my explanation of déjà vu, is you've already been shown this, you've already seen this, and now you're actually walking through that timeline. So the things that I've seen precognitively, they happen exactly. Every detail is exact. And I know, and I've learned the difference between precognition or precognitive dreams and just regular junk dreams, or spiritual visits with deceased people or living people, or bilocation experiences. Those are very interesting.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, those are very interesting.
Do your precognitive, does that information always come through in dreams for you?
Not every single night, but I know when what I'm seeing is like a global event that's happening, or a personal event that's happening with somebody that I know or somebody I'm going to meet. It's really very interesting.
And we've heard as you're talking that you kind of have, I don't know if it's a passion or just because it's just something you must do. Like you had a mission, you were talking about your mission, but you are continually training and educating yourself. In fact, you've spent a lot of time at a place that makes me so envious. Can you please paint a picture for us of Arthur Findlay College?
Oh, well, it's a life changer.
Yeah.
I had wanted to go to it. I had heard about it. And my simplest description is like Harry Potter school, but they don't have flying brooms. But
I love it.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful old building and the most exquisite tutors in the world. They're so gracious and they're so, amazing at how they teach. So there I am with over 100 students from all over the world. I've never met anybody there. And they teach you, I wanted to learn platform mediumship. That was my next kind of evolutionary leap, I guess, of training. And so I'll just describe that. I'm in a chapel on the stage with my back to the audience. And there's, people out in the audience. And the tutor teaches us how to get a spirit to come in. And my back is turned toward the audience. And when someone in the audience can raise their hand that they know who the spirit belongs to, then I turn around. And so I had an older man who had died and he'd lost his function in his legs. And he died long ago and far away. And so a lady in the audience put her hand up and the tutor said, okay, turn around. And I almost collapsed on stage because my legs almost went out from under me, because I feel everything in the person's body that's deceased, how they died, if it's a brain aneurysm or a heart attack or whatever it is, I feel it in my body. And so I thought, wow, this is so interesting how this works, how these departed souls can communicate so clearly. And they're right here. It's a dimension it's difficult to describe, but they're right here. They can communicate so clearly with us, and I get to see them. I get to feel them. I hear them. They touch me, they communicate very well. And so that lady, she was from Holland. And so when we returned, I did a Skype medical intuitive reading for her. And I said, oh, you've got something wrong. And I said, you need to see a doctor. You've got some twisted cells in your uterus. And she said, no, I feel fine. I said, no, you got to see the doctor. So she contacted me about 3 weeks later and said that the doctor had found early stage cancer and operated immediately. So, I see these things, I feel these things. And anyway, getting back to Arthur Findlay College.
We'll get to the medical intuitive stuff.
Yeah. So at Arthur Findlay College, we were trained how to read cards, but then we were trained to not use them. And I had gone in with all my tricks of psychometry and reading tinfoil and ribbons and whatever, wedding dresses, you name it. I could read anything. And then so I'm sitting across from the student I'd never met. And I said, okay, give me your watch. And so she gives me her watch. And then the tutor's right beside me. She said, well, what are you doing? And I said, psychometry. She said, oh, we don't do that here. Should we go directly to the divine? Okay. And so, she was so lovely. These are like angels. The way they teach, it's just beautiful. So, I dropped all my tricks and I was able to get the information. And then I remember at the end of our week, some of the students were talking about these orbs that they could see. And I couldn't see any orbs. I thought, well, what are they talking about? So I went to my room and there I was sharing a room with 3 other ladies. So there's 4 of us in the room. And there were orbs zipping around everywhere. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so cool. What are these? Now, I do want to say the 3rd day that I was there at Arthur Findlay College, one of the students came through with my mother, who had been departed for a very long time, and gave me all this exact information. When I went to my room, I was just bawling like a baby. It's as if somebody opened me up and touched this very, very painful, unresolved grief. And one of my roommates came in and said, oh, Terry, what's wrong? And I said, if this is what we do to each other as mediums, I don't think I want to be a medium. And so she just held on to me until I stopped crying. But in that process, I wanted to sue the school because they didn't warn us this could happen. And I went through the whole range of emotions for this unresolved grief. And then I found this peace, and I found this compassion and this understanding that when I work with somebody and we hit upon this unresolved grief, that there's healing that comes through. And so I can be with people in that place and help them through that, because those are very difficult readings, I have to say.
Oh, yeah.
So I would love to go back there, but they do teach online now, which at that time they weren't. And so that's an option for people that can't travel there. But it changed me forever. And I'm glad that I went, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
That is awesome. So clearly it sounds to me like you could easily bypass all of the tools. There's not a tool that you need because you go right to it. But is there a part of you that, do you spend any time, doing a traditional seance or using any other spiritualist tools? Do you get into any of those techniques?
No, what I do when I do a reading, I get the person to come out of their head and go into their heart beating through taking some slow, deep breaths. And when they feel their heartbeat, then I can connect to their body. And then they're not in the logical mind with all of their blocks up. Because some people are very skeptical, which is fine. I was the most skeptical person going through all my training, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But some people are very defensive. So until they can come out of their head and actually go in and feel their own heartbeat, that's when you know that their neurotransmitters and their neurology is calm enough that you can go in and do the work. So it's kind of a little bypass to get into them.
Yeah.
If that's okay to say.
Yeah, but I guess so, because with a tool, like, you can always be skeptical of a tool, you know.
Yeah, and when I used to use cards, I didn't use tarot cards. I used fractal images because I don't like pictures and words, just fractal design, because I pick up on the design and the frequency of things. That's what I came back with from my near-death experience, was everything is frequency, and I can decode the frequency. I hear it, I see it, I smell it. It touches me. It touches some part of my awareness.
I've heard you describe it as like turning the channel on a TV.
Yes,
and that
yes.
I thought was interesting, and connecting to a completely different station.
Yeah, that it is, and it's tuning in to that frequency. And now I know what frequency I should go into when I'm doing a reading for somebody, because everything that's ever happened to your life is recorded in your nervous system, in your central nervous system, and in your body. And that's what I read. Past, present, and it comes from the future too. So it's remarkable, and even the most skeptical people soften and become believers, as did I.
Mm-hmm.
I was very skeptical going through my training.
So with this medical intuition, I think that is so interesting. How does that work specifically? I guess you've talked a little bit about it in general, but how much of your work ends up being medical intuitive work?
Every reading, I start with a medical intuitive body scan, because I want to make sure that the person doesn't have some disorder or disease that they don't know about, and then get that really good connection to their body, so it proves my accuracy to them. And then I can go and get whatever information they want. So, and for an example, I did a reading for a young lady. She wanted me to do a reading for her mother. I have no idea where her mother is on the planet. But when I tapped into her mother, I said, "Oh, she's got Hodgkin's." And she said, "Yes, I'd like to know how long she's going to live." So, I can name these things and be very, very specific. I still don't know where her mother is on the planet, but, that's part of our training with controlled remote viewing. And then I also took some training with a professor of anthropology in the very early years, and you had to be gifted to even get into the class. And then so he taught us how to scan people's bodies, and I didn't know anybody there, and we have to scan each other. And so I was sitting across from this young man, and I said, "You've got this shiny knot right here on your side." And he said, "Yeah, I had surgery there for hernia." I said, "Show me your scar."
What validation now?
Yeah, I wanted proof. That's how skeptical I was. And so he showed me. And then we went into this other room, and there was a lady laying on a bed. And so the professor was showing us with his hands how to scan the body. And I said, "Well, what if we already know what she's got?" So then after he was done, I walked right up to her, and I said, "You have an arterial block right here, right here." And I have never said those two words in my life. I don't even know what it means. Right? And she said, "Yeah, I had a shunt put there for dialysis." And I just backed up from myself, out of sheer fright. Like, what is happening to me? How can I do this? So, it evolved from there with lots of training to learn how to go into a person's body and get this information. So, it's a talent, it's a gift. And I'm going to be approaching some doctors to see if I can work with them, because the other day I had a nurse from ICU, intensive care unit, who came to me for a reading. And I was picking up on all these patients that she's had, with all of these issues. And she said, "Oh yeah, that's that patient. And, she didn't bring those patients with her, but they're in her field. They're in her energy field. And so I'd like to be able to work with professionals, maybe perhaps in a research type project, because it would save the medical field so much money. Not that they want to save money, but, because that's industry, right?
Well, test after test after test that is not needed. That is, after you said that, I mean, that would be so amazing. Like Dr. Julia Mossbridge, when she was on the show, she was telling us of the different ways in the future that precognition could be used, just normally. And I was like, shut up. I never imagined precognition just kind of being a thing that, like with car insurance or, buying a car or whatever. And just if we get, if the medical field could be so open to one of these days, just having a U at every hospital and just
I don't
using
even have
that.
to be at the hospital. I could be here. I could be anywhere and do it. In fact, I was on a Zoom call today with Julia Mossbridge and the fellow you mentioned earlier.
Marty Rosenblatt.
Marty. Yeah, we had a thing on a meeting this morning, and she took us through a simple, very quick exercise on precognition. I was right. I mean, it happens that fast, right? And that's over Zoom.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I also can do this for businesses. Like I did a controlled remote viewing session for a fellow who had a medical research business. And I was telling about all the people on the board and who was the renegade who was trying to get away with all the information. And so, I have been trained that way to understand people's motives and their plans, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a pretty specialized field that when you use your skills and abilities and training in a positive or in whatever way you're going to, I use mine to help people. And
I'm glad that the right people always seem to get this ability.
Yeah. Some of the readings are remarkable. And the hardest part, I think, of my job is doing suicides.
Mm.
I do a lot of readings for people where the loved ones, their loved ones have taken their own lives. And those are very difficult readings. But my experience is that the spirit heals, and so does the person that has come to me for a reading. And those feel miraculous. Those are a life changer.
and probably a feel good kind of satisfaction that you get after those.
Yeah, once you get past the enormity of it.
Yeah.
It's very humbling.
Yeah.
Very, very humbling. Yeah, it made the first time it happened, it made me very deep and wondering, should I be doing this? How does this work?
Mm-hmm.
But it does, and it's a good thing. And, when you start talking about near-death experience with Christian fundamentalists, they think, oh, that's of the devil. That right. You're in the wrong domain. No, this is quantum physics. This is entanglement. This is energy. We're all energy. So I do want to also touch on time travel.
Let's do it.
Okay. I have a very specific memory of time travel where a portal opened up in the middle of, say, like 4 feet away from me, in the middle of air, a portal with very distinct color and numbers. And this information was transmitted to me, and I started shaking from this download of information. And then that evening, as I was sleeping, I remember lifting up out of my body, and I was hovering in the corner of the ceiling. And then I went through the plate glass window, and I was traveling on a curved light beam at tremendous speed into the future. It felt so good, I have to say. And I saw 3 fingers being amputated. And I was so shocked, I came back to my body as this plasma ball, this electrified plasma ball. And I sat up to meet this ball of light. And I threw my nightgown off. And the ball of plasma light dissipated into my chest. And I phoned 2 people and told them, what I had experienced and what I thought was a dream, you know. And then 2 weeks later, I was on the beach with one of the people I had phoned, and he was introducing me to his brother, who's a surgeon, who was telling us he had to amputate 3 fingers from a patient. And so the guy I had phoned 2 weeks earlier to tell him, he looked at me and he just backed up from me. And I was backing up from myself. I thought, well, how does this work? You know, and, you know, I've shown some of my work to a specialist, a medical specialist, and that person was so frightened. The person just backed up from me, you know, saying, well, how do you know what you're capable of? I said, well, I don't. I'm in training. I'm learning. So I said, you have to have an open mind. Oh, but I'm a scientist. Well, yes, but you need to have an open mind. You know, this is how it works. So, you know, it has been a very interesting ride.
Yeah. Well, the next question I have for you kind of goes into that. You know, you're talking about kind of medical professionals around you. You've talked to. Well, here's a question from John Lillies of carbonlilies.com, and they are fellow Canadians, and they're perhaps the biggest, you know, supporters of this show. I love them. They're fabulous. John asks, do you find that Vancouver is a supportive community for what you do?
Yes, I'm always busy on Vancouver Island, and people that I talk to in Vancouver, I mean, we're just a ferry ride away. There is a strong community of quantum physics-minded people here, and the whole spiritual community. I don't think you can separate science from spirit, really, because it's an animation of our consciousness. And so, yes, there are a lot of supportive organizations and people here.
And I've heard that the sights there and the weather is fabulous. That's what they told me, that we should all be jealous.
Oh, well, I'd kind of rather be in a place that's more sunny and warmer.
Really?
Well, it's gray on gray here, 6 months of the year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Karen Prine, who is also obviously from Canada, would love to know your thoughts on the best training options for persons living in Canada for strengthening psychic abilities.
Pam Coronado lives in the States, and she's a psychic detective. And she has online classes that are really great. Pam is a great teacher, and she doesn't charge a lot of money. And she'll take you through the basics all the way up to intermediate psychic detective courses in opening your psychic abilities, etc. Really great, easy to work with. I'm not providing or offering training at this time because I'm too busy. Mm-hmm. But I have additional resources where a lot of people are listed within that. So if Karen wants to contact me on my website, I will send her the additional resources.
Very cool. Thank you for offering that. And I know she'll hear this and let me know if she heard from you. That would be cool. So, you know, I'm going to let you give us anything else that you feel like you didn't share that you wanted to share, and also let us know kind of what's coming up for you. If you've got any cool things coming up, I think you might be sharing some secrets. But before you do that, just one quick nerdy question, because I know a lot of the people that listen to this show, we are total Halloween nerds, and Halloween is coming up. And I just was curious, you know, do you have any traditions or special memories of the holiday that you'd like to bring up, or not? Some people are like, no, not into Halloween. And then I'm like, what?
Well, I have offered to do readings at a coffee shop in West Shore on the 30th of this month, because I thought, oh, wouldn't that be nice for Halloween?
Yeah.
You know, but otherwise I spend the actual Halloween day with my grandchildren.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they have their own cool little Halloween experiences that they go out and get? In Canada, I think it's probably a little different than the US, you know, with traditions and things. Do they do trick-or-treating there?
Yes, they do. They get all dressed up and we go out trick-or-treating. And I should also say, you know, I've taught my grandchildren telepathy. You know, we have these telepathy games. and remote viewing games. And so I've been teaching them that since they were very young, really young.
Very cool. So this is not creepy and weird. They're going at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are.
Well, give us your final thoughts and tell us what's coming up.
Okay, well, let's see. I used to do a lot of readings in person, and now I only do them at fairs just because I'm so busy now. I am getting ready to write a book because publishers are hounding me to write.
Yeah, awesome.
But it won't be till next year. I think I'm close to setting a date for when I'm going to start because I've been invited on a spirit cruise. So I'm able to be a guest speaker and also provide readings. And I was surprised when I received the information about the spirit cruise because it's a UFO cruise. And so that'll be coming up next year. And it's quite interesting because I have memory of craft. And these are kind of like interdimensional, like remote viewing. But I have memory of being on craft and seeing anti-gravity technology, being shown anti-gravity technology, and a lot of other things that I'm not going to get into during this interview. But these are experiences that I've been sitting on since 1986 that I have not wanted to come out about. And so now I'm starting to come out about it and really take ownership of these memories because these are, real. And in fact, I was approached by somebody who said he was from Blue Book, somebody from the military who came to me years ago and tested me. And he says, "Oh, you're a prodigy. We want you to brainstorm with the Tesla group." And he says, "You've been abducted." And I thought, oh, this is all bull. I'm really super skeptical. I still had kids at home. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be exploited, So I walked away from that. And I always wondered about that. But with these memories of these advanced computer chip design and anti-gravity technology, I know who these things are for in life, and he was not one of them. So, I don't want to impart this kind of knowledge to the wrong people. So, my favorite topic is time travel. And these kinds of evolutionary spiritual emergence experiences that people are having, because there was a lot of people waking up in the world. And this is not about religion. This is about the evolution of humanity. And that's what I like to research. That's what I like to explore. And I like to do this kind of work with like-minded people. So that's where I'm headed. That's where I'm going. And I'll probably start my book after this spirit cruise next year.
That's awesome. And I hope you will keep us posted on that, because listeners know I'm a sucker for a book by an intuitive.
Oh, okay.
So we will read it.
I have a weird memory with this book, too, because this has something to do with Neil Young, believe it or not. I don't know why. It's maybe one of his publishers, or because, I don't know, something across the border into America. I was shown very specifically. And I don't know. I don't know Neil Young. And I mean, I like his music. Mm-hmm. I think it's great. I don't know if he's had a near-death experience or what this connection is with him yet. I want to also say I've had these bilocation experiences with other people on the planet. And those people know who they are. They know who they are, right?
Mm-hmm. Will you explain one of those? Explain a bilocation experience.
Okay. I was trained by Lyn Buchanan of CRV or CR Viewer. Controlled remote viewer. And anyway, he used to teach at the CIA for 25 years. And so he had a near-death experience. He had a heart issue. And one day I was at a friend's house, and Lyn lives in New Mexico. And I was on Vancouver Island here. We're long ways apart. Lyn was standing outside the plate glass window looking at me. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can he be here? I know he's in New Mexico. So I emailed him. I said, Lyn, did you realize you're having a bilocation experience, or else he's remote viewing me, one or the other, Well,
but your first thought wasn't, oh my gosh, that's creepy.
Well, I wondered why he would be standing there looking at me. Maybe he's either remote viewing me, or he's having a bilocation experience and he doesn't realize it. Or maybe he does realize it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I let him know, and I'll leave that with him.
And what was the response?
I didn't wait for a response. It doesn't matter to me. I just give the information.
Yeah.
And I had another experience with Sai Baba. His spirit was coming down the road towards me, and I just remember the feel of him, his presence. It felt so calm. Oh, wow. It felt amazing, I have to say. And that memory has stayed with me, all these years. So he has the ability to bilocate. And I've bilocated into other people's homes, where I can see what's going on there and tell you all kinds of stuff about their life and their house. But those things are kept in check. I keep those things in check, and I try not to pry. If it comes to me, then I honor it, whatever I get.
Do people ever, I'm sure it can get tacky, but people who are fascinated with this, do they ever try to get you into the, parlor tricks and games? Like, so tell me what do I have sitting over here across the room? And can you get yourself into someone's room if they're just like testing you and say, Well, we did that this morning, just before this call with Julia Mossbridge and on what was Zoom. Yeah.
With Marty Rosenblatt. And so, she's got this test, and it's either A or B, and I was correct when I chose the right one.
Wow.
So it doesn't matter about time or distance or task. That's our training.
Yeah.
That is our training to find the right information for people.
Oh, I would love to be able to just on the fly pick someone like you, pick their brain all the time and be like, okay, so I'm drinking something. Tell me, what is it? That kind of thing.
I have to say, I was in an ambulance with the ambulance driver because I accompanied my friend who was having heart failure, right? The other day. Yeah. So I'm in the front of the ambulance, and I was asking the guy, well, how'd you get into this field? And he told me his whole career, and it was really interesting. And then he says, well, what do you do? And I just kind of snickered, I said, well, actually, I work as a medical intuitive and a psychic medium. And he said, what? I said, yeah, I had this near-death experience, and it left me really gifted. So I had to get training. So we had quite a conversation. He was really fascinated. He said, quick, grab my hand and tell me all about me. I said, no. I said, the siren's going. We're driving at 80 miles an hour. This is not the time. So I gave him my card, and away we went.
Oh, that's funny. You would probably need a good couple of hours to read me. I'm kind of a hot mess sitting here, all kinds of stuff going on.
Well,
you'd have to make a chapter of a book for me.
I sense that you have a female departed, and what's going on with your stomach? Do you have digestive issues?
OMG.
Yeah.
I just recovered like the last 3 or 4 days from major stomach bug.
Yeah, I can feel that in my body.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know this is not my body that has this pain. I'm so empathic that I pick up on everybody's issues, and I can see or feel a female that's departed who's been at your right shoulder since we first came on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I'm in a good mood, and you've had such a great energy, and you're so pleasant, and I am so glad that we got a chance to chat. And I want to remind people that you can go to terryandersen.com. And again, that's with an E-N at the end. I know I've even seen some shows that you've been on, and I look at the show notes and it has an O-N at the end. I'm like, hey, it's Ian! Terry Andersen.
Yeah.
Guess what? After the interview, Terry offered to give me a full reading. And when I asked if I could take you along with me, she said, sure. How awesome is that? Well, it hasn't happened yet, but I'll keep you posted. She's a cool lady. thank you to the following super paranerds who support the show at patreon.com/Big Seance. Genesis, Bianca Roth, Diana Lloyd, Natalie, Amy Park Gedicke, Sonia B., Jenny Becker, Kim Robb, Jim Budd, David Rubenstein, Josiel Lorenzo, Susan Davey, and Paula Mitchell. My supporters at the Parlor guest level, who can be found at bigseance.com/parlorguests, are Dina DeCastro of Dina DeCastro Astrology, Peggy Hagen, Sharon Bowles, Marion Hover Clairvoyant, Bruce Williams, Christopher Kohler, Lana and John of Carbon Lilies, Denise Sia, Anna Frias, Norman and Linda Keller, and Karen Prine. And guess what, Jeffrey Peck? You have an anonymous listener joining you this week for the Above and Beyond There's Not Even a Category for Your Level of Support fireworks display. This listener supports at the $10 level, and I'd really like to recognize them, but they've chosen no reward in Patreon. So if that changes, please let me know. And of course, Jeffrey Peck supports the show at the $20 level. Thank you, Jeffrey. We'll keep listening for that Paranerd Hashtag.
For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com. You can find and subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and just about anywhere podcasts are found. Do you have any comments or feedback? Go to bigseance.com/feedback to learn how to get your voice in a future show. Or you can call my feedback line, 7755-TELL-ME. That's 775-583-5563. Interested in learning how to promote and share the podcast? Go to bigseance.com/share. Thank you so much for listening. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.
The Paranerd hashtag for this episode is medical intuitive, all one word. I don't think Terry has a Twitter account, but she does have Facebook, so I'd be pumped if you wanted to share and tag her there. But if you'd like to stick with Twitter, tag me at Big Seance, and again, use the hashtag medical intuitive. You rock.